Welcome back to the Healthy Commute. I'm Dr. Dan. I'm with Dr. Pascal. Today we're going to talk about an interesting, I think, topic again, which is, what is better? What should we do to be as healthy as we possibly can be? What's the best thing for our bodies? And we're going to talk about exercise. Is it better to have an active lifestyle, to be constantly moving, or is it better to, to do some great, organized, fitness classes, Orange Theory, CrossFit, whatever it is. So we're going to talk a little bit about everything.
Right, and so I think, just broader picture, we'll get some context. As the years have gone on, probably in the past 50 years, there's been more and more research coming about we need to exercise, we need to exercise, we need to exercise. But, now as we're getting further and further into this, we're realizing also that it's not just about exercise, it's really more about movement. And now I think there's a few misconceptions about exercise, and we're also getting more and more sedentary lifestyle. So now we also have to change the way that we approach this so-called exercise for us to really get the benefits that we're looking for, right?
Now, just to, maybe clear things up. Number one, I think a lot of the organized exercise that we do right now is just literally to make up for the inactivity that we're doing the rest of the day.
Correct.
So now we're sitting down, we're sedentary, and now we're like, well, I don't want to be sedentary. I know exercise is good for me. So now we do, a structured 1-hour class. 50 years ago, we didn't do that because we were moving, walking, field work.
Exactly.
We were doing more activity, so we didn't need the organized exercise classes like we do today.
Correct. So movement, aka exercise, was part of your life.
Right.
It wasn't just a part of your day. And I think that's the difference. So we know exercise is beneficial, but now we're realizing more and more, now that people are sitting with technology for hours on end, that 1 hour of exercise cannot undo the 8, 10, 12 hours of sedentary living that's either before or after that hour of exercise.
Like a few years ago, the catchy title was, sitting is the new smoking.
Correct.
And really what they were kind of trying to talk about was you can't undo the 8 to 10 hours of inactivity with a hard 1 or 2 hour workout.
Correct.
You can't undo it. You can't undo the damage that you've done to your posture, to your joints, to your immune system, to everything just because you were sitting all day. Just like you can't out-exercise or out-eat 2 packs of cigarettes. It's
right.
just there. So what we're trying to do now is, okay, what can we do to make it, better for our bodies? What are the key things? And I think an interesting topic and what got us thinking about this was the study that we were just reading about, what or how much exercise is too much exercise.
Right, where you would have a negative effect, meaning decreasing lifespan, right? Or having what they call increased mortality. So to be very clear here, we're discussing exercise versus active lifestyle, but our goal is longevity, right? So when Dr. Dan and I are discussing these topics, we're trying to find ways for not only ourselves, but to help our patients, our community, our city, to find ways to live as long as possible, right? Not now, but when you're in your 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, what can you do today to have the best quality of life and live as long as possible, right? And so what this study looked at was when people were doing more than 60 minutes of high interval or fairly intense exercise, there was actually a decreased lifespan, meaning like you were starting to do more harm than good once you got above 60 minutes of intense activity and 90 minutes of cardio. So someone running, maybe 2 hours on the treadmill was actually doing more harm than good.
Now, just to clarify, I've done a marathon. I know you just did a marathon.
Absolutely.
I've done my training. I was, going over 2 hours. So here what we're talking about is, yes, you have a goal to do a triathlon, a marathon, a half marathon, whatever it is. That's great. Here what we're talking about is, okay, so as a whole, right, what is the best for our health and well-being?
Right.
So for me, that was always a goal for me to do it. So great, I did it.
Sure.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
If that for you is something that kind of, that inspires you, fantastic.
Right.
What we're talking about here is for the person that just wants to live an active, long life and be able to move when they're 80 years old.
Right, correct. Because let's just look at it like this. Why would, we'll say, over 60 minutes of high intensity interval training, why, if someone was doing that day after day, could that decrease lifespan? Well, when you're doing that high intensity training, say you're lifting weights and you're moving heavy things over and over and over again, you're doing a little bit of micro damage, so a little bit of swelling, a little bit of tears to the joints, and there's that chronic low-grade inflammation in your body day after day after day after day. And eventually that will wear your joints down faster. So maybe you're not as active when you're 70 or 80, and that will lead to that decreased lifespan or decreased life potential later on.
Right.
And so someone sedentary, for instance, let's say you're sitting all day, you're sitting 8 hours, and then you sit in the car, and then you head to Orange Theory or Fit Body Boot Camp or CrossFit, and I'm not dissing any of those because I go to the CrossFit gym myself,
yeah.
but just saying, so you were inactive all day, and then you get into the gym, and within 15 minutes, we're pushing almost 180 heartbeats per minute, and you're going as hard as you can, throwing things around, doing these complex movements with bad posture potentially, and that's where that risk of injury comes into play, or that micro damage to the joint. So sometimes, if not done properly, that can do more harm than good.
Yeah. So a few key things is obviously make sure that when you're doing your workouts, you're warming up, you're doing all the right things. And we're not saying to stop all these amazing workouts; those are all great.
Good.
What we're just talking about is, okay, so what else could you do outside that hour and a half that you're doing your workout?
Right.
So for me is, okay, what do you do for those 22 other hours?
Right.
How could we increase the movement during those so that we can have a better impact on our overall health?
So yeah, we'd have bad, better, and then best.
Right.
So bad would be being sedentary all day long, not moving at all during your waking hours. A little bit better would be then doing that CrossFit or that Orange Theory, doing that 1 hour of structured exercise. We're not saying take that away, because if you're not going to do anything else, that's still by all means better than not being active for stress response, cardiovascular, things like that. But what would be even better than that is on top of your 1 hour structured exercise is find ways to move, quote unquote, exercise throughout the day that is just low grade activity.
Right.
So we're going to get into tips of that. Yeah.
Right, and part of the study also mentioned that one of the best in terms of longevity and overall health is continuous low grade movement.
Right.
So if you think of it, let's say if you're working your yard, it's the early June, you're starting to get your garden going, you're cutting your grass, you're trimming things, you're moving throughout the day. You're not kind of, let's say, breaking a sweat like in 15 minutes. It's just a constant low grade movement. That is what they found is probably one of the best things to do for your overall health.
Right, because they studied that from those populations around the world. There's a few pockets around the world where people commonly live to be 100 plus while being active. And in those communities, those were the common factors. Like, there's no public transportation, so people are walking and biking more, and they're working with their hands in the garden, and they're working outdoors. And in those communities, there are no structured exercise facilities. Like, those people don't do structured exercise. They don't need to. Why? Because for their 16 waking hours, they are moving constantly all day long, right? So let's talk about some of the things that you can do. Yes, that's a perfect world. You're gonna go live in one of those communities, you'll live by the ocean, you'll ride your bike, you catch your fish, so on and so forth. But let's talk about what you could do realistically, somewhere like our community, like Winnipeg. What can you do to increase your activity throughout the day?
So I guess if we want to start with the average person, let's just say the average person is working, let's say 8 to 10 hours a day, mostly, if you want to call it sedentary. They're at a desk, they're at a computer. So driving, yeah, that's right. So what we want to be conscious of is what's called 30-30. So every 30 minutes, you're moving for 30 seconds. So the only way that we could really do this is if we have a structured way of measuring that. Because if I tell you to do it, next thing you're working on something, next thing you know, it's 2 hours and it's gone. So we need 30 minutes on your phone, on your watch, something like that just kind of gets you a little ding, and all we need to do is move. Ideally, stand up. Let's say bring your shoulders back. Squeeze those posture muscles in your back. Squeeze, move you around, touch your toes, stand back up, go get a glass of water, do a photocopy, come back to your desk, and then start back to work.
It does not have to be complicated.
Just a little bit of movement. Now, what that does, it's almost like a reset button for your body. So if you're doing that every 30 minutes, you don't have 2, 4, 8 hours of accumulated pressure and stress on your neck, your back, your everything for your body. So number one, you'll feel better at the end of the day. You'll be less tired, but also your body's moving, so you have great input into your brain and your joints. Everything's working better.
Yep. A simple one that you can do too, and I know some people do this. They keep even small 10-pound dumbbells at their desk. Right, and then every 30 minutes or every hour they get up and they take those dumbbells and they literally with both hands just touch the floor and then bring them overhead, and just going up and down 10 times like that, getting your torso moving up and down will just stimulate movement throughout your whole body, increase your circulation, increase your mood, make you feel better, more alert. So it doesn't have to be complicated. That's kind of where we're getting at with point number one.
Now the other thing is, let's say if you're working in an office building, let's say if there's an elevator or there's stairs, guess what? You've heard it before. Yeah, take the stairs. So if you could do those stairs, let's say 2, 3, 4 times a day, going, let's say, from one place to the other, there's a little bit of movement. Again, better for your overall health and well-being.
Yep. If you have to make phone calls, even if you're at a cubicle, for instance, you could just stand up and then you could march in place, right? Just standing and marching in place while you're doing your phone calls would be great. Or if you're in one of those, big facilities, sort of a corporation that has a gym, you could go down, get on the treadmill, put the pace on the treadmill to like 1 mile an hour. So not a fast walk, you're not breaking a sweat, you're not out of breath, you're just moving. And go make those phone calls. If you have to make 4 phone calls that day, save them for maybe the hour before lunch or the end of the day, and go walk on the treadmill for an hour while you make phone calls and just move while you talk, right? That's a simple solution to being able to do something like that.
And even better, like today we're recording this and it's 30 degrees outside in mid-September, so it's a beautiful day. So take advantage of it. Make a few phone calls as you walk, in the sun. You're moving, you're getting some sunlight. It's all good.
So try and find ways, especially if it's in an office, it's a bit more challenging, but find ways to take breaks every 30 minutes to every hour minimum. Get up and do 30 seconds or a couple minutes of exercise every hour throughout the day for that low-grade activity.
Yeah. So a few tips, Dr. Pascal. What would you do, or what do you do right now that you've incorporated into your life that has caused you to move more?
Well, one partially choosing this profession because I wanted to be able to move all day long. So we're very fortunate. We're on our feet all day. We're constantly moving back and forth. So we get thousands of steps done just by the nature of our profession.
Right.
2, I've decided to bike to work. So I commute on my bicycle a lot to get that low-grade activity. Saves money, gas, de-stresses me, so on and so forth. 3, I have a weight set in my garage. So certain mornings I don't have time to go do a big workout. I'll just go throw a few weights on a bar, put it on my back, and I do squats just until my legs are tired. So maybe that takes 10 minutes and I'm done. 4 is at nighttime, I choose not to sit on a couch ever. So I sit on the floor, on the carpet, and I will, find different positions and I twist and I stretch, and that's not necessarily, we'll say, exercise, but it's a form of mobility to keep my body healthy and supple. And I'll do that for 45 minutes to an hour before the kids go to bed, just, stretching and rolling around on the ground instead of being sedentary on a couch.
Yeah. And so for me, what I do, one of the biggest things that we have is we got a dog about 1.5 years ago. And so for us, whether it's summer, fall, winter, we're constantly going outside for a walk. So we do, morning when I go home at lunch, I go for a walk at lunch, and in the evening. So there's always some movement. And it's, yes, some days we don't want to go, but guess what? When we're back, we always go, oh, you know what? I'm so happy that we had almost a forced, walk, and that we got us moving, talking. A lot of times my wife and I will go and spend the 15 minutes by just ourselves without the kids asking us questions. So that's a huge one. I think get a pet. This definitely helps. The other thing I do is in the basement in our laundry room, I have a pull-up bar and I have weights, kettlebell, things like that. So anytime I go down, I'll do, whether it's pull-ups or kettlebell swings, whatever else. So when I'm doing let's say my clothes for the next day, or ironing my clothes, or going into the the freezer or the fridge downstairs, I'm always just then doing one thing for that time. So sometimes I'll be there 2-3 times a day. Well, I'll do
20-30 pull-ups.
Yes, exactly. So there's just constantly low-grade movement that I'll try to do as much as we possibly can.
And every time you do that, it's like 30 seconds. You feel refreshed.
Right.
It's unbelievable how just 30 seconds of quick exercise, all of a sudden, it's like having a cup of coffee. You just get this blast of energy. You feel like refocused. It's unbelievable what just a little bit of movement will do for your state of mind more than anything.
So as I guess as a recap, exercise is great.
Yeah.
Keep exercising. What we really want to talk about is now, how could we move more during the rest of your day? So try to incorporate things, morning, midday, end of day. And the other thing we maybe forgot to talk about too is that, let's say if you have a gym at work, even better would be every hour or so, go down there and do 5 minutes of movements with your weights around the treadmill. Like we talked about doing a phone call on there, but any little thing, it's not about breaking a sweat, but just being active and moving as much as you possibly can.
To be clear, Dr. Dan's not saying go down there, change into your gym clothes, right? Because you're doing 5 minutes of low-grade activity, you should be able to do it in your dress pants, or even if a lady's wearing a dress, you should be able to do this in regular work clothes, because you're not, doing burpees and doing crazy things that are going to tear your clothes up here. This is very simple stuff just to get your body moving.
Yeah. And again, our goal is just for you to live a long, happy life for as long as you possibly want. So again, I'm Dr. Dan. This is Dr. Pascal. You've been listening to The Healthy Commute. We'll see you next time.